Welcome to Liquid, how CFOs outperform. I'm your host, Tom Gavigan.
And I'm Holly McNulty, solution engineer here at Kyriba and former treasury practitioner.
Today, Holly and I are joined by two very special guests, our CEO, Melissa DiDonato, and our CFO, Adam Drew. Both of you, thank you guys so much for joining. Very much excited about our conversation here today. And we'll just jump right in. And Melissa, if you don't mind me starting with you, I'd love to ask you, what would 5-year-old you think of you today?
What would 5-year-old me think of me today? Well, first of all, I grew up in a household where my mother used to tell me, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. So the 5-year-old me would think I should be wearing a princess dress right now, and I'm not. So that really stings, first of all. So I think the 5-year-old me would say, where's your princess dress? Number one. Number two, how in the world did you get that job? And you should be wearing something much more comfortable than what you got. I think that the 5-year-old me probably believed a whole lot at that stage of my life in superheroes. So perhaps I might also say to oneself or myself, besides your princess dress, where's your superpower outfit? They would think that perhaps Adam needs to be walking around like in a number suit, like in the Sesame Street days, probably because he's a CFO. And maybe I need to be walking around with a cape, a bright pink one, of course, and a headband to be maybe perhaps a Wonder Woman version of myself. But I think that probably would think that the 5-year-old self would be very proud of me for getting here, and probably think it's very normal to be a female CEO. So that would also be very welcomed.
That's awesome. I love that. So Adam, what would 5-year-old you think of being a CFO?
So, it's a really interesting question. I don't think 5-year-old me would have even known what a CFO was. If you told me that it was something to do with numbers, I'd probably have been pretty thrilled. I love numbers all the way through school. Wanted to be, a statistician for years. Thankfully, didn't end up doing that. And I think, when I was 5 back in school, careers to me were just big ticket items, right? We saw teachers around us, we saw doctors around us, we saw people who worked in offices, and I couldn't really have distinguished between any of them. And it wasn't really until I was in probably my 20s that I even thought about what a career path might look like. CFO ambitions even later. I was in accounting practice until I was into my 30s, so didn't even dream of climbing the corporate ladder. And I guess as we go through the podcast today, you'll probably see a theme that Melissa is probably a little less restrained than I am. But work was always just something.
I don't know what that means, does it? Look.
When I was in school, work was just something that went on while all the kids were in school. People went to factories or they went to office buildings with people toiling away. So, the fact that I love my job and I really enjoy my job now, at least that would have given me something to look forward to, I think.
Can relate there, Adam. I think there's a lot of, you at that age, you don't know about these jobs, right? Especially also in technology, even going through, higher ed, you're unaware of these roles that are out there. I think it's quite fascinating what you can uncover. So I do appreciate that. As finance leaders, there's a lot of moving parts in our work. We're always looking to outgrow, outperform, outlast the competition. So this first segment is what we call the Chief Outperformance Officer. Okay. So I want to start with you, Melissa, again, and I want to ask your opinion and your viewpoint on the relationship between the CEO and the CFO and why it's so important. What do CEOs rely on your CFO?
That is a great question, because this is something that Adam and I don't talk a lot about, but yet we talk a lot about it. And when we first started talking about Adam joining me here at Kyriba, we reflected on our previous relationship. And we talked about what makes a successful team and how do the CEO and CFO work together. It really is a Batman and Robin thing. It's something that you really need to put a lot of work into, because one depends upon the other greatly. And the better the relationship, the much more profound output that one will always get. We depend upon each other, we work together, and we must always be on the same page. Adam needs to understand deeply about what I'm thinking and about how I'm planning to move the company forward from a strategic perspective. He has very quickly abandoned his accountant roots in effort to try and provide financial data to make better business decisions with me. And that's really, really important. So I think that whole, yin and yang, Batman and Robin routine is critically important when it comes to the best operational strategic relationships between a CFO and a CEO. I mean, I, for one, am a very driven CEO making decisions based on data. Everything I do has to do with the foundation, and that foundation is always due to data. And a lot of that data is financial. And that data needs to come from out of it in a very proactive way rather than a reactive way. But the good thing about Adam, as he already said, I'm a bit more, I don't know what the word that you used, Adam, but perhaps I'm quite energetic. I'm quite a big dreamer. I'm very focused. I'm a fast mover. And he does help keep me grounded. He doesn't slow me down, that's for sure. I think, Tom, you could probably attest to that. But he does help us in way of focus, regardless of how big or grand or how visionary all of the ideas that I put forward could be. And that all starts in the rooted relationship between the CEO and CFO that must be based on data that's originated with trust and transparency. So I think he really helps. I would never say control my ambitions, but balances my ambitions and my very, very big dreams for this company and for my customers in the roots of what are financial reality. He and I and the entire leadership team laugh a lot. You've got to have a sense of humor when it comes to working with me and Adam, for the record. I think it's really critical that when we look at the relationship between a CEO and CFO and why that's so important is because the CEO tends to oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, be the big dreamer, the strategic thinker, the one pushing everyone forward. On the other hand, the CFO needs to be on that journey too, needs to share the dreams and the vision, but root the decision-making based on financial agility, but financial reality, and bringing forward the data that's going to help enable us to make better business decisions.
The balance thing is really, really important. And so I'm interested to hear your side of this conversation, Adam. So what's your perspective on this partnership?
Yeah, I think, the relationship between CEO and CFO is probably the most important relationship in any company. To Melissa's point, any good CEO, particularly ones trying to be great, should be looking to absolutely push the envelope on what the company can do and can achieve. And the reality is, if they aren't aiming beyond that envelope, then you probably question the level of ambition, right? And if anything, Melissa does love to push on the edges of that envelope. But I think what that means is that the CFO role really becomes twofold. You have to be the data person. Right? There are plenty of people in that room around the executive committee, and everybody's got ideas and everybody's got ambitions and everybody's got dreams, but it all comes back to the data. And I think that's where I come in, or any CFO should come in. And that's data in terms of numbers, but also, just keeping that eye on being the steward of the business. Where's the business going? What are you trying to do? And ultimately, are you heading in the right direction for all the objectives that you've set yourself? And I suppose with Melissa, if Melissa can be the dreamer, one of us has to be the realist, and that often falls on me. But once you've got that balance right, then the numbers just support it, right? You trust your gut feel, you trust your instinct, but you make sure that you're doing so on a solid foundation. And ultimately, in the best circumstances, the data's just there to tell you which option to choose. You can come up with a whole plethora of different things, different opportunities, and really then it's Melissa's dreams versus my reality, but we normally get to the best outcome.
I think, I learned quickly, Melissa, like you said, as you came on board, you're very data driven. And Adam, I've learned from you, you are mathematical minded, right? So I guess that partnership really helps out. But I'd like to kind of double click on that a little bit. Melissa, you've shared before with me and others your diverse background. Also, you've been in pre-sales, so a little bit close to the heart here as well. But I wouldn't mind you kind of going in a little bit deeper about the diversity of your experience and how that blends with working with Adam as well, who also has his own unique and different experience and the inner workings there.
So, Tom, you're right. The criticality, it's more than just importance. It's the criticality around diversity of experience really helps set apart the good companies from the great companies, in my opinion. Now, I had been fortunate enough to have a front seat in, front row seat really in technology over the last 25 plus years. That's all I've ever done. I came out of uni and college and went straight into tech. So I've always been in the same industry. Now, a variety of different types of companies, everything from a small, growing, emerging and large enterprise software businesses. So companies of all sizes. But the technologies have all been different. And diversity of thought has really been a key underlying tenet for me of not just developing a different viewpoint, but really developing better outcomes. And it's not just because I'm a woman, therefore I become diverse. That's not related at all. I think really genuinely having a room full of people that have the same background, the same way of thinking, and the same understanding is going to end up with the same answer. And that's not what you want. You want a diversity to develop a diversity and innovation in way of thinking, right? You want diversity of thought, and innovation, it almost can't reach its full potential unless there's diversity in the room and broad representation in the room of different experiences. And it's not about everyone getting the same training at SAP or getting the same training by working at Oracle. It's about taking a consortia of people with very different backgrounds and very different viewpoints. As you could see from our executive team, I mean, our executive team, the majority of our executive team holds a passport and lives in a country, more than one passport, but lives in a country that's different from where they were born, has completely different backgrounds, has completely different languages of origin, grew up in completely different ways, look different, act different, speak different. And that's what I think makes this company set apart from probably a lot of our competitors or a lot of anybody else in the technology industry. Adam's journey to becoming a CFO is completely different from my journey to becoming a CEO. And that's really important, right? We have to face different kinds of pressures and experiences and challenges, not just to become what we are today, but to overcome the future challenges that we're going to face that we don't even know what they're going to be yet. And that being the case, it covers more opportunities. It makes us more innovative. It makes us more broad brush when it comes to creating better solutions and communicating with different types of customers. We operate in dozens of countries around the world with customers of 5 employees all the way through 500,000 employees. Literally, there's people all over the world through their different direct and indirect customer base as well as their employee base. And being able to communicate with them, we are awarded to be able to communicate with our customers because we all have different approaches and different viewpoints. And our exco bringing that wider diverse it experiences into what we would say a big humongous melting pot of diversity allows us to realize the strengths of our company and thereby better able to be positioned to communicate with our customers, our partners, and our communities in a much, much broader, much better, more enriching way.
I'm not just saying it because you're our CEO, but of course I agree. I do believe our exco truly represents the broader Kyriba organization, and as you said, Melissa, who we serve, the market we serve, and it's one of the things that truly energizes me day in and day out, being able to start my day talking to people in Europe and my evening talking to people in Asia. It is one of my favorite parts about working at Kyriba. But I think also, Adam, if you don't mind chiming in there, again, you kind of already elaborated to your route to becoming a CFO, but like Melissa said, just a completely different experience on your journey, but important as it relates to how we are working together and growing this company and so on. But can you share your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think you're right, Tom and Melissa, of course. I mean, my route to CFO, whilst not the same as Melissa's in terms of tech, it was pretty linear. I did an accounting degree. I joined one of the big accounting firms to qualify as an accountant. Then I did a controller role. Then I did a commercial role, and eventually got my seat at the executive level. And then you throw in a mix of public companies, private companies, owner-managed businesses, and more recently private equity. And I think I've got most bases covered in terms of where I've worked and how I've worked. But I think when it comes to Melissa, one of the main reasons that we work so well together is I love using finance to tell stories. Right? It's what pulled me to finance in the first place. Everything across any organization always finds its way into the numbers some way. If you're selling a product particularly well, you get a boost. If you get an issue with an employee or an issue with a legal case or something else, you get to dig into the detail. You get to take everything on its merits and you get to see that side of the business as well. And I think, whilst everything has a financial impact, it's really being able to pull those strands together to tell the company story that, I absolutely love that in my role. And I guess the last point I'd make, Melissa is tech. She's had the roles, she's been in that driving seat in a number of companies. I'm not. right? My tech journey only really started about three or 4 years ago. This is my second tech company. But I think it's our different views of the world. That's what means that we have most angles covered between us, even before you consider just how diverse and the breadth of experience that we've got alongside us on our executive committee. So yeah, I think it really is differences rather than similarities which give us the ability to work well together.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. So I'd like to shift into some more financial topics. So as leaders, what are you looking to your treasury team for? Are there any unexpected ways that the treasury team is having a direct impact on strategic initiatives or the company? And we'll start with you, Adam.
I mean, look, job number one for treasury is always making sure the company has cash. Whether it's cash on hand, whether it's, arranging overdraft facilities or lending facilities or any combination of those, cash always has been king. And the reality is, certainly for the length of my career, cash is always going to be king. It's not just about having cash though, and it's not just about moving money around bank accounts. It's forecasting that cash. It's know that you're going to have enough cash at the end of the month, the end of the quarter. It's managing cash positions around your end. And then ultimately, if you can get enough cash, you've then got the nice problem of what do you do with it? How do you best deploy those resources? And really that's where treasury comes into its own. I think beyond that, in terms of strategic initiatives, company growth, any of those things, how treasury interacts with those is typically company dependent. But what I would say is it always comes back to risk. It could be FX risk, it can be inflation risk, it can be commodity prices, it can be any combination of any number of financial risks. They will differ depending on nature, size, and complexity of whatever organization you're working in. But they're all monitored and they're all mitigated by an effective treasury function. Balancing risk against company objectives is where treasury really delivers value to an organization.
What does the CEO need to understand about the importance of treasurers and CFOs working together, Melissa?
So I mean, that's an interesting question because one would assume that the treasurers work exclusively with the CFOs. And I would say that's not actually true. When I was the CEO of a publicly listed company, I cared a whole lot about our cash, just for the record. and in fact, on earnings calls every quarter that I was the CEO, every earnings, I was asked questions about liquidity. So it's not an exclusive relationship that the CEO needs or wants to seek to understand about how the relationship works between the treasurer and the CFOs. And if any CEO thinks that the treasurer relationship is exclusive to the CFO, I think first, wholeheartedly, they're wrong. That will never work, right? The liquidity and cash and risk and payments and these topics that our liquidity performance platform covers is a CEO topic, not exclusively a CFO topic, because everything's connected, right? And the relationship between a CFO and a treasurer and a CEO and a CEO and a CFO is holistic in nature. And yes, indeed, Adam does oversee the more, the broader and frankly, detailed financial strategy. Maybe the CFO is focused on the detailed financial strategy and I'm focused on the broader financial strategy. But I care deeply about planning and reporting and thereby collaboration is required even for me when it comes to treasury. And thereby that treasurer relationship with the CFO is, which we referred to earlier, the foundation of the house that needs to be incorporated when you're creating any kind of business strategy, when you're thinking about planning and reporting and long-term and short-term strategic planning. Liquidity, performance, investments, risk, payments, ultimately is the beating heart of the company's financial operations. And if that's not sound, and if that's not uncovered and working collaboratively with the CEO and the CFO, then no business plan, in my view, could be tactically effective. It just will not work. But when it works well, it works really bloody well. And that idea of strategically sound, detailed information and planning that really get fed in tactically and effectively to the overall corporate plan delivers financial stability and really helps propel sustained financial growth. I mean, Adam probably wants to add to this, but because he's the CFO, so I'm talking about from the CEO lens. and how important, that relationship is. I mean, but to me, I depend very heavily on Adam to oversee the relationship, as I just described, but also to uncover things like financial risk and compliance. A treasurer will inevitably have deep expertise when it comes to risk management, that complements my, oversight of financial reporting and Adam's deep oversight and insights to financial reporting and overall company controls. But together, the CFO and the treasurer will help protect us, help protect me, right? Potentially from the company, and the company as a whole from financial pitfalls, any kind of regulatory issues, and compliance issues, really creating that stable foundation that I need to be able to execute on our company's strategic objectives and plans. So, I would say that whilst the dynamic duo of a CFO and treasurer are critically important for me and keeping us safe and sound, it's a really important relationship for me to have too. And by the way, for every CEO, and you don't need to be the CEO of a publicly listed company to have an important and viable and critical relationship with your treasurer, right? You're talking about the company's liquidity performance that will drive so many decisions strategically and tactically, but also protects you from financial risk and compliance. So it is a triad relationship that I think, if run well, makes a company unstoppable.
Yeah, I think that's true, Melissa. Risk, that really is at the heart of everything that a treasurer should be doing. You mentioned the expertise that the treasurers typically have. And as CFO, that risk is always front of my mind. Nobody wants to be the CFO of a business that runs out of cash. It'd be even worse if you were the CFO of a business who ran out of cash and didn't see it come in time to deal with it. And ultimately, if I haven't got complete confidence in how we forecast our cash and the fact that those financial risks and compliance are on point, I just can't do the rest of my role properly or effectively.
Let's double click on that a little bit on the risk management aspect, because it obviously is so critically important, because there's always something on the horizon, right? And a lot of scar tissue of recent things, whether it's, the banking collapses that we saw last year in the Americas, or the pandemic does not seem, in the isolation we went through, it does not seem like it was that long ago. And obviously a lot of geopolitical activities on the horizon and currently going on. So I'll go to you, Melissa, and just ask, how do you approach risk management and decision making in high stakes situations where we live in a world where things just change every day, it seems?
Things totally change every day. It's funny you said something about COVID not being that far away. It feels like it was forever ago, and it feels like it was yesterday at the same time.
It's hard to explain.
It's a phenomenon that so many of us now have lived through that I, by the way, never want to have again. Just for the record,
Please,
but no, we don't want it again. But as a CEO and a CFO, you always plan for it, right? So I always say, this is our plan, this is our goal, this is how we're managing risk, right? And then there's a whole nother layer of risk in that one needs to think about and manage in very high stake environments. And I think, a couple of things have helped train me and teach me how to manage and approach risk in a new way. I spent a lot of time in the last year and a half with the UK government and understanding the volatility, right, and how fluid the world could be from a government's perspective, and serving people has helped me become a better CEO. There's no doubt about it, because it taught me what real a service-led approach is. How I am in this role to serve my employees, my partners, and my customers. I'm not here to serve me. This is not about me or my role or how much I make. It's only about how I can serve, and serving the best way. One really needs to act quickly. I mean, I'm a big proponent of pressure makes diamonds. So I love the pressure, but one needs to act quickly, but one needs to build on their expertise and their experiences. And sometimes a bit of high stake, quick decision making, particularly around risk, it takes too long to make decisions. And an early mentor of mine said, it's far worse to make no decision than a bad decision, because a very quick bad decision you can undo. And part of making, the best decisions you possibly can is understanding what your gut's telling you to do. And the gut is not flippant. It's not reckless, but it's having been through enough scenarios and experiences and been around long enough. Not me, I'm young, but I mean, other people, perhaps. And this is advice for the others, for the younger people, not for me. But I've been around long enough, I guess, to say that my experience has given me the ability to pull on my gut, to understand the difference between right and wrong, understand the difference between high risk, medium risk, low risk, and help evaluate how to make decisions based a little bit on gut. Now, I don't make gut decisions all the time. My decisions are made on data. But if you need to couple data with gut, I think it's a really good way, because sometimes, and most people say your gut isn't usually wrong. But what's more important than gut? And that's data. And if you can get the two things right, you're managing risk, fast decision making, and optimizing the best outcome in the best way, because data doesn't lie, right? And Adam said earlier, and Tom, like everything, I always ask for data. I mean, ad nauseum, constantly. I drive my team absolutely bonkers because I'm constantly using data, and it's about using not just historical data, because history changes, but informed data, right? You want to try and eliminate potential risk, take out guesswork of the equation by using some level of historical data, but using current insights too, and that will provide even a better output. If you have your gut operating with with data and let's say expert advice, right? So if you take your gut with data and expert advice, and then put it all together, I think you got a magic formula for potentially planning ahead. I mean, what Adam and I do is we always hope for the best and plan for the worst, right? We always say, this is our forecast. I want more. My mother says I'm never satisfied. There could be a little bit of truth to that, I think. But whilst I'm never fully satisfied, I always prepare to fail, but fail very, very fast. And if you prepare for the worst and plan ahead for that, you're going to be able to have much faster, much more informed decision-making that's likely to be far better and we have a successful rate outcome than maybe perhaps you would otherwise.
I'm not surprised by your answer at all, Melissa. I think to your point, I think Adam will relate specifically about the data side. And I guess, Adam, to put you on the spot there, could you just talk about that aspect as the CFO about the data, the importance of the data, but also like the accessibility of it such that you can probably react, in a dynamic world that we live in, and be able to react right to the situations that we're facing and ultimately where the company is ultimately going?
Yeah. I mean, look, I love Melissa's answer, and part of what I love about working with Melissa is that combination of experience. I've never seen Melissa make a call on anything without asking what the numbers say or what does the data say beforehand. And then, supporting that with a been there, done that, got the T-shirt or got the Christian Louboutin. That's what really sort of more, I think, sets us apart in terms of how we make decisions. I guess in terms of data, I am a data person. I think I alluded to it earlier. I love being able to use data to tell stories, and I like to tell stories over and over again. I find the more that I tell those stories, the better I get at them, and the more sure I become of the facts that sit behind them. Because ultimately, whilst I think there's a very important distinction to be drawn between data and facts, right? Data can be used to tell you anything if you look at it through the right lens, but the facts are always the facts. And so you have to get to the facts behind the story before you can properly make decisions. And I think the other part to that I would go back to from Melissa's side is the point around expert advice. I think Melissa's network significantly larger than mine. I mean, she's probably about the most connected person I know. But in terms of diversity of thought, it's absolutely critical, right? You can, by the time you've got the facts and then you've got some expert opinions on them, and I use my team a lot. They give me good counsel over all of this stuff. I think you are 9/10 of the way towards making good decisions and mitigating risk if you've got facts and counsel on your side. So, yeah, I would say start with data, but make sure that you've got facts, not just opinions coming from that.
So we've all got secrets, but today we're hearing it straight from our guest. So let's dive into our next segment, which is CFO Secrets. With you, Melissa, I'd like to start with what's one piece of advice you share with a finance leader looking to make a change in their org? And keep in mind, we have a very diverse audience here of people who are listening in, of people who are very senior and experienced and tenured in their roles, and also like analysts who are starting out and getting into the world post-grad here. And in that vein as well, what do you wish you would have known as you started your career, Melissa?
I think the one thing if I had to pick just one, I would. Well, okay. I don't have to pick one. I'm going to pick two. And it's under one umbrella. Is that okay, Tom? So I would say openness is my umbrella, but there's specifically two things. I think that around advice that I would encourage folks to have at any point of their life, be it personal or professional, no matter where you are in your career, is to be open, but to be adaptable and to be focused on communication. I was a CEO of a tech business before, and about 4 years ago, I had an employee come to me at early onset Parkinson's disease. And he came to me and taught me about this importance to have this was before COVID, by the way, it was like 4 months before COVID, to have this thing called AQ, where AQ is far, far more important than having EQ or IQ. And AQ is the adaptability quotient. And being adaptable at any point of your life, personal, professional, at any part of your career, no matter where you are and what phase you're in, whether you're a CEO or you're starting out as an analyst, being adaptable is the single most important critical human trait that you could have. And understanding that importance will define your happiness and your success in life in every regard. Not every day is going to be a ladder. I relate to people's careers, or one's career, my own, as a New York fire escape. And anyone that's ever watched Friends or any TV programs knows that a fire escape goes up and then it drops, or it goes up and then it goes to the side and then it goes up again. And that is what life is about. It's not a career ladder. It's a New York fire escape. So being adaptable is the single most important human trait I think that one should possess. Now, when it comes to the second part of under my umbrella being open is communication. You need not just communicate to the others what you see or what you're doing, right? But you also need to communicate what you want. And that's something that we all often miss out on. Whether you've tried something and they failed, you need to communicate. Whether you've done something and you've excelled, you need to communicate. Whether you've made a decision people love, you need to communicate. If you've made decisions that people hate, you really need to communicate what the decisions were, why the change happened, why the decision was taken. And if you communicate openly and honestly whilst adapting to the world around you, that's probably those will be the two most important bits of advice I would give. Now, the second part of the question was, what would I have wished I would have known? I wish I knew. Well, I mean, look, I was lucky. So this I kind of did, but it was purely by luck. I had taken on mentors very early. And every career decision, if anyone's, listened to any other podcast I've ever done or anything I've written, I always talk about the importance of mentoring. And I was incredibly lucky, super, super lucky that I happened to fall upon the right mentors. In fact, the first mentor ever said to me, Melissa, you got to get into this SAP thing. It seems to be catching on. That was literally the bit of advice that changed my entire life. So I think that I wish I had known how important mentors were going to be my whole life. That would be one. The second thing I would say is I wish I knew what I was fighting for. I didn't know when I started my career that I'd never dreamt of, like someone asked me, in fact, my chief of staff asked me in New York this week, when did you know you're going to be a CEO? And I was like, am I a CEO? Oh yeah, that's right. I am a CEO. I still can't believe I'm a CEO. I mean, it's such a privileged, incredible role that I never thought I'd be able to do that. But and I say that in a way that I never knew what I was always going to fight to be or fight for. And I think that my advice to my younger self or anyone, at any point of their career was try and think about what you actually want. And not what you want, but think more about what you're really capable of. And I didn't ever think I ever could be a CEO. And had I had believed in myself a little bit more, a little bit earlier on, and furthermore, how hard the journey would have been to be where I sit today, maybe it would have been a little bit different, or I would have taken a different route, or maybe each turn where there were challenges and, I would have been judged in a way by responding to those challenges, right, wrong, or indifferent. I would have handled things differently. I mean, I'm very proud of where I am, but I think that bit of advice about getting your right mentors, understanding the criticality around those mentors, understanding who you are, be yourself, find out not what you want to be only, but what you're actually capable of becoming, and then try and understand what you're fighting for. And if you do that, you have the best odds of being the most successful in what your dreams could possibly be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a challenge that a lot of our listeners probably face, and it's very relatable. So something that I hear regularly from our prospects is that there are a lot of challenges that they face managing their day-to-day treasury operations just due to the ever-changing economy. Adam, what's your best-kept secret for staying ahead of the curve when everything seems to be changing constantly?
I think I'm not just saying this because my boss has just said it, but communication is critical in this one as well. So, one of the things that I enjoy in my job is intellectual debate, right? It's having conversations with smart people in the executive capacity, in my organization, across the organization. I love getting out and I love talking to people. And I love having conversations and discussions that put me outside my comfort zone. Right? When you're in your comfort zone, nothing's really happening. And so when you're outside of that comfort zone, either there are two possibilities, I guess. Either my beliefs are being challenged. And if my beliefs are being challenged, it means there's an alternative opinion, and then I get the chance to reflect on them and grow from that challenge. Or I'm speaking to somebody who knows something better than I do. And if that's the case, I'm learning, I'm growing, and I'm getting the opportunity to really gain insight and gain a perspective that I've never known before. I think in finance, and you can probably say this across all of the disciplines in business, but you just can't have too many of those good debates. When it comes to staying ahead of the curve and it comes to consistent change, what those debates do is they stir the pot, right? They give you different scenarios to think about. They cause concerns that you can then try and mitigate. And ultimately, they give you a range of perspectives on, what am I trying to solve for? What's the actual question that I'm gonna be faced with in the future? And I think being challenged, it puts you that step ahead in terms of your thinking, and that's how you really stay ahead of the curve. If change comes along, if something comes up that you haven't dealt with before, what those intellectual debates and those conversations do is they mean you've either already thought about it, or if you haven't already thought about it because it's come from so far out of left field, at least you know who you want in the room alongside you when you're trying to fix it. It comes back to our point earlier around diversity of thought, it comes back to experts. If you've been having those conversations and you know who you can go to and who you can trust in the business, you might not be 2 steps ahead of the curve, but at least you're on the curve and you're heading in the right direction in terms of trying to solve for it.
Communication and willingness to learn are just both so really important in our personal lives as well as in our career.
I think what's one of the things that's interesting is, having done a number of these now, there's a common theme. Everybody we've talked to at the CFO level has talked about like pushing your comfort level, like discomfort is a good thing. And that speaks also to Melissa and AQ and adaptability and being able to do that, right? We cannot just be complacent in what we do, obviously personally and from a business perspective. We have to force ourselves to be uncomfortable. And we always took, Holly will attest. That's a big thing for me.
Yeah.
Try something new, right? Try something new, like a podcast, perhaps.
Yeah.
Well, we are short on time, and I do want to close it out, and I want to introduce, the human element of things. And I want to ask, I'll start with you, Melissa. We could do a whole other segment on this as well, perhaps one day. But you're not a CEO all the time. What do you do in your free time? What do you do to decompress? Tell us a little more about you.
I would say that I am a CEO all the time. I mean, I literally, on a moment's notice, will
True.
take care and look over all of my employees and my customers always. And that is the burden one bears as a CEO. You have the responsibility and the accountability of people in perpetuity, 24 hours a day. But my mind does need to relax. You need to decompress to carry that, right? To carry that load with you. One does need to rest their mind. I'm a runner, so I usually run 10K or between 10 and 12K a day, depending on how much time I'm an early riser. I get up very early in the morning, as Adam will attest to. I think he put on LinkedIn once I messaged him at 5 a.m., which I do, but you don't have to answer. It's just how my mind works. Everyone works at different time zones, as we well know. But I get up every day and run, except for usually Sundays, which is when I sleep. So for me, that's a great way to remove the stresses and really balance and start my day off well. If I can't run or if I don't run, I recently, 3 years ago, got into horses because I had a little girl. So I go out and try and escape for 30 minutes on a horse and give them a little tiny bit back to what they give me. But that's how I tend to clear my mind of the responsibilities of that minute, even though I'm never not a CEO.
Yep. You also have other hobbies too, if I can share, right? I think it was the second time we got to meet. We were coming back from dinner, team dinner, and we're in the hotel lobby, and there's a baby grand piano there, and Melissa just decides to start playing.
Belting
It
Oh
was
my God.
Journey.
Yeah,
Don't
too,
stop,
piano.
Journey. Don't stop believing, and just decided in the middle of the hotel lobby just to serenade us all with her talents there musically as well, which I appreciate as well. So. Very
I do love the
diversity.
piano.
And what about you, Adam, to close it out on your end? Anything that you want to share as it relates to what you do when you're not a CFO? Understand you are a CFO all the time.
Or at least from 5 a.m. some mornings. I guess for me, it's family time as well. I've got the most incredible wife. I've got 3 young girls. and along with the
Oh
family
no,
job.
you had to mention your wife, right? So when my husband listens to this, my husband's also very important for the record. So if my husband listens to this, he's also really incredible. Sorry, Adam, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I mean, we're in a new house at the moment. We moved in earlier this year, and that, that was always going to be a project. We don't have a roof on certain parts of the house at the moment, and
Oh my.
and the roof that we do have are letting in water, so we're going through a big sort of renovation project to get that fixed. Outside of that, I'm a big sports fan. I love my rugby. I love pretty much any sport. I'll be honest. I will typically have an update of some sort in my hand where I'm catching up on the latest sports and notable events.
Wow, what a great conversation. I think we could have spent a lot more time with Adam and obviously with Melissa. Obviously so eloquent and articulate and explaining kind of their viewpoint on things. I would say from my side, Holly, the biggest takeaways from that conversation are a few things. One, I think Adam is such a great representation of my experience in working with CFOs, and I think the audience will pick up on that. I think his emphasis on data and making sense of data and using data is something we see as a theme common amongst all CFOs, and obviously is very, very relatable. I also think when we look at our CEO and having met her and worked with her now for almost a year, she is very data driven as well, and obviously I think that's why that works with that relationship that those two have. The other takeaways I have are also what I would consider is like communication and the importance of it. We're both Kyriba employees, and I think we have seen just a heightened emphasis on communication from the top down in our company, and I think it's evolving and changing what we need, how we work, and how we grow as a company. And obviously it is an important attribute that has been established by Melissa, and in part her executive committee, like Adam, and being transparent and always kind of starting with why, always explaining why it is we're doing certain things. And then the last part, and probably the most important part, was the emphasis on diversity. Melissa's so proud and comments all the time about how the executive committee is very international and lives in places where they weren't born, holds multiple passports. And I think having that diverse experience and background at the executive committee level, like I said in the interview, I think it's representative of actually what Kyriba stands for, not just with the people we have, but also the community we serve, with so many different customers in so many different geographies, with so many different industries that they work within. I'd love to hear from your side, Holly, what your takeaways were or any feedback on the interview, but also what you see on the diversity spectrum of things, and how we see that maybe as a microcosm within our own pre-sales organization, as an example.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I agree with all of your points there. And coming from my practitioner role, I can attest to the fact that Adam definitely has that, data-driven, numbers-driven personality that is so commonly seen with the CFOs. And what I think is kind of cool and unique to Melissa is the fact that she's also very data-driven, as well as having that like strategic dreamer type personality as well. So it makes them a really good duo, and very dynamic and able to work together very well. On the communication side, I agree. I've definitely seen a lot of increase in communication. I think it's super important across all organizations to make sure that the treasurers and the treasury team is communicating very closely with their CFOs and CEOs. I think communication is super important throughout any organization, so that everyone always feels like they're in the loop and they know what's going on. Because then it creates more inclusion, and it creates an environment where people feel valued and feel that job satisfaction. And to speak to the diversity part, that's also incredibly important, because especially in, our role in Kyriba, like working with the customers that we have across the globe, being able to have those different perspectives from different geographical locations. The customers that we have in Japan might relate to something differently than the customers that we have in the Middle East. And so being able to have members of our team that are represented from those different areas as well really helps us to understand those clients' needs better and helps us to be able to meet their expectations. And what I really love about Kyriba is as well, and about what I think Melissa spoke to as well, is that we also have like a lot of different backgrounds. Like our teams across the company, they have they're not all finance majors, and they have that breadth of experience in different areas that allow us to come together collectively and be able to use experiences that we've drawn from different roles that we've had in the past and be able to serve our customers better.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's one of the things I've learned in my 20-year career now, I guess, is that diversity, that ability to work and interact with so many different types of people and different walks of life and different regions is what I value, I think, the most out of this job or any job in the future. It's so incredibly important. It energizes me, I think, it challenges us as well to adapt and evolve as we need to. And I think that speaks to what Melissa was talking about AQ, right? We can always assess IQ and those types of things, but adaptability is so critically important, especially for today, in today's world. So again, I look forward probably to having Melissa back on the show at some point for sure, and Adam as well. There's a lot more I think we could go through, both from a finance and treasury perspective, but also I think probably on some of the other topics as well, such as horseback riding or music. But we'll have to save that for the next one, right? To never miss an episode, subscribe wherever you listen. I'm Tom Gavigan.
And I'm Holly McNulty.
And this is Liquid.